Welcome to episode number 117 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Jason Sayeda, and today we will discuss the Phillies and their recent struggles, our thoughts on the upcoming trade deadline, and anything else that comes to mind for the Phillies. Then later in the show, we're going to pivot to Saratoga's Saturday Jim Dandy card, the late pick four, and any other happenings that are going on at the spa. This episode of Broad Street Hustle is brought to you by our sponsor, Giovannina's Pizza. You've tried the rest, now try the best, Giovannina's Pizza. Okay, let's get to our panel. Tommy can't join us today, but we are joined by Jimmy the Chalk. What's going on, Jim?
Are we going in order of finish from the quiz contest? Because you were first.
I'm
Now,
gonna get
now
there.
I'm second. I'm second. So,
Okay.
okay. I was just asking.
Yep. And speaking of that, also back with us today is our last place finisher in the Broad Street Hustle Sports Trivia Contest, the one and only Chris Meeker. What's up,
Yeah,
Meeker?
I maintain that was rigged, not in my favor, but I digress.
I have no idea how it will be rigged. We would love to hear more about that, but we get to that another time. And last but never least, the legend is back. Our horse racing legend, our Saratoga legend, Jimmy D joins us today. What's up,
Hi,
Jim?
guys. It's great to be back, especially when the feature race that we're going to cover is named after me.
That's right. That's right.
All right. I have to cross out one of my lines for later now, but
There you go. All right, guys, let's get into it. So the Phillies segment we're going to take in two parts. First, we'll start with their recent swoon, and then we'll get to what our thoughts are on the trade deadline. So first up is the swoon. The Phillies have now lost their last three series. They lost to the A's, the Pirates, and the Twins. They're 3-6 in those games. They haven't really hit, and their bullpen has struggled. But they still have a 9-game lead in the division, and they still have the best record in baseball by 3 games. So, is it much to do about nothing, or what do we think's going on? I'll start with Jimmy Chalk.
so I'm not panicking as a fan after the last couple series. But as you started to get into, I think we saw in the last three series a little bit of each potential deficiency that this team could have moving forward that they're going to have to consider addressing in the next week. So bullpen's been up and down. They blew a couple of multiple runs late in games in the last three series. They had games where the bats went dead, like you mentioned, and Suarez has been not really a great pitcher since that London series. So now you got to say, well, with that fifth spot kind of being open with injuries, and now Suarez maybe struggling a little bit, do they need another rotation piece? So bullpen, outfield bat, and maybe a starting pitcher are things they've been talking about with the trade deadline. I know we'll get into that later. But one reason I'm not super worried at this point is, you kind of have to put it into perspective with how the rest of the league is playing. So I think, coming out of the Dodgers series, we all felt pretty good. They, including the last game of the Dodgers series, they're 4-6 in their last 10. But, for July, they're 9-9, 500 ball, not great. And especially, considering how well they played the first couple of months. But 9-9 is as good a record, if not better, than the following teams in the month of July: Dodgers, Brewers, Braves, Orioles, Yankees, Cleveland, Minnesota, Houston, Kansas City, and San Diego. What do all those teams have in common? They are 10 of the remaining 11 teams that would be in the playoffs, aside from the Phillies, if they started today. The one team I didn't mention is the New York Mets. They have a better record in the month. There's a couple borderline wildcard teams like the Pirates that are having better months. But Detroit's nowhere around, and they have the best record so far in the month. So they're not playing that much worse than pretty much anybody that you would think is going to be a legitimate World Series contender. If they play 500 ball the rest of the year, they're still a 94-win team that's going to be in the playoffs. You don't want to see them do that. So I'm not worried just yet, but, we'll see what they can do in the next few days.
Meeker, what do you think?
Well, they're also 19-19 in their last 38 games, which starts from that London series forward. What I just don't like seeing, and what I have seen, and Jason and I have been texting about this, is they're losing games they should win, and they're not winning games they should lose, which is what they were doing before the London series, pulling out games late, winning games in extra innings and so forth. And, what we're seeing is them losing, and I'm not, obviously, they're not a losing team. They're the best team in baseball record wise. But obviously, with the Marsh debacle the other day and missing that ball in left field, Alvarado's blown save and against the Pirates. I mean, these are games that they should win. The problem is, are these deficiencies something that's going to creep up in the playoffs when they obviously have to play better competition than they're playing right now? And the Twins are a good team. I wouldn't call them, or the Pirates. They're good competition, but these are games that they should have won that they didn't win because of the same deficiencies that we've expected to rear their ugly head in during the season, but they've been able to get around it, because they're that good a baseball team. Now, I do take into account the fact that their 19-19 was also through the Turner injury, through Harper's injury and Schwarber's injury, JT's injury, so obviously they weren't at full strength during that 19-19 run, but they're at full strength now, and they've been losing games that they should be winning. Obviously we'll talk about the deadline and what they should do. But one of the things that they need to improve on is their defense. They're not a very good defensive team.
Yeah, but that's
and
that's never going to be like, even last year they weren't. They're just not built that way. They're not built to. They're just not going to be good defensively.
well, when you have close games and you're not good defensively is when you're going to have issues and you're playing good competition in the playoffs. And that's what I worry most about. I don't know that I'm worried so much about Ranger. I know he hasn't pitched well. Seems to be a little bit tired. We'll talk about whether or not we think we should be trading for a rotation piece. The bullpen, like you said, Chalky, hasn't been the same dominant bullpen. I don't know. I don't know that they've been taxed any more than any other bullpen in the league because their starters go deep in games. So I can't say that. But yeah, I mean, will they need to make some sort of move? We're going to talk about it. But right now, I just don't think. I don't want to say they're coasting and maybe they're not really concerned. And do I have panic concern or anything like that? No, I just don't want them to be losing games that they should win. And that's what's happening recently.
Jimmy D, we got.
I'll tell you, it's not much to say about a team that's 64-38. It's 627 ball, and that's pretty strong. But, during the course of this swoon, we'll call it a minor swoon, they went to London, and then they had the break in the All-Star game. I think that's a disruptive force. I don't pick horses when they're coming back from overseas. And teams coming back, I think it changes the chemistry a little bit. It just disrupts the karma that you got going on in the field. And I think that's one of their problems. My wife is a great Philly fan. I told her all along, I want them to lose a few games. I want them to come back to the pack a little bit. I don't want them to coast on the front end. I don't like that. The projection of winning 115 or 116 games, I don't want that. I'd rather see you win 99 games and win the World Series. Get hot late. Last year at this time, I was a little down on them, as you guys have criticized me for, and rightfully so. But this year, I think that if they make a couple moves at that trade deadline, and I think Chalky and Chris have both touched upon that, I think it's necessary. There's no question that bullpen needs help. There's no question we're very unlucky with bad closers. I don't get that. But anyhow, with all that said, I'd be a great general manager. When I could base my opinions on all facts, but realistically, some of the dead wood in the bullpen should go. We certainly need a quality reliever. Quality closer would be, just phenomenal. I think we need an outfielder. Chalky had mentioned a Rangers swoon a little bit. I'm concerned about that. I've been saying all along we need a fifth starter. But if Ranger goes sour, we got a problem. But I'll tell you what. On the other hand, you've got Nola who's pitching lights out. You got Castellano who's hitting. And the other guys should, they're going to be they're Harper's Harper. They're going to be good. The Marsh thing, the one thing I'll say about Brandon Marsh, I hope that doesn't blow up in our face, because we traded Logan O'Hoppe for him. And that's going to be a great catcher in the future. And, don't give me Stubbs or Marchand. Once JT is done, it's coming, because you could see slowing down. That's going to be a problem. I knew and I'm not knocking Marsh. I kind of like the guy, but we might have traded away an all-star catcher.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll just take a step back, and it's a point that Jimmy just made, Jimmy D. I've been telling people, hey, they're still at a 102 win clip right now. They're if they would have stayed at the rate that they were winning, they would have been an all-time team. They're not an all-time great team. They're a good team. They're a very good team. And their 627 win percentage is 102 wins. That's a hell of a lot of wins. So, I think it's much to do about nothing. However, I do think that this losing streak has come at a good time, because it's a week before the trade deadline, and now the warts that the team has are showing. Now, you guys know I've been saying that they desperately need a right-handed hitting outfielder, preferably a left fielder, and a late bullpen arm. But I've also wanted them to add a starter, and I said last year that I didn't think Ranger Suarez was a number 3 starter on a World Series team. And the beginning of this year, I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong about that, because, he started out the year, he was almost leading the odds to win the Cy Young Award. Now I'm starting to believe it again. And now the word's out that they're looking for a starting pitcher upgrade. To me, I don't think they're looking for a 5th starter. I think they're looking for a number 3 starter.
Well, if you're going to make a trade, that's what you got to make a trade for. I don't think you're making a trade for a 5th starter who's going to get 10 times around the rotation and not see him in the playoffs. That would make no sense, to your point. And I don't know if it's fatigue. I have to believe it is, because his body language tells me it's fatigue, and he just seems tired getting into the 4th and 5th inning is when he's getting in trouble. And he's not hitting his spots like he normally does.
Well,
he doesn't blow you away with velocity, so he's got to hit his spots.
So a pitcher like that, it's arm slot, and it's hitting his spots when he's painting corners, just like Sanchez when he's painting corners. They don't have like this blow away stuff that's gonna, that's gonna knock your socks off. When they're hitting corners, they're tough to hit. When they're not hitting corners, when they're wild in the strike zone, they're gonna get hit. So, I was going to throw it to you, Meeker, first. What are your thoughts on that? I guess you just kind of said what you think, but what do you think they're going to do? What do you think Dombrowski's going to do?
When I look at the market and when I see what's out there and what teams want for what a lot of teams need, which is starting pitching, I actually don't think that the Phillies are going to make a trade for a starting pitcher. I think that you can grab a good bullpen piece, whether it's a guy that you actually slot in as a true closer, like a Tanner Scott, who won't cost you the world, because I think that what the A's want for Mason Miller is going to cost you too much. You can grab a guy like Scott. I think that's definitely a possibility. They want to make a move like that. And I think I would welcome that move because, again, I don't care who you're putting in there. I just don't have, I love Hoffman like you do. I'd rather have him in the 7th or 8th rather than the 9th. And we don't really have a true 9th inning, closer right now. So if we can grab a Tanner Scott and you slot him in as a closer, I'd like that. When it comes to the outfielder, here's something I want to actually ask all of you guys this question. I don't understand this, but maybe you can tell me. In June is when teams start to say, okay, I'm going to put this guy on the market. And teams don't tend to make any trades in June, right? But you have teams that at that point, maybe they're looking at the future and saying, I don't know if this is our year. Like, who was the team that we talked about earlier this year about this situation. The Houston Astros at one point in time were out of the playoffs, but now they've crept right back into the playoffs. But during the time when they were at 15 games under 500 or whatever they were dangling Kyle Tucker out there, right? Which would have cost you a lot. I don't know if that was posturing or they really wanted to trade him, but teams don't seem to make moves in that time of the year when if you wait another month, things like the Astros getting back into the race and no longer putting Kyle Tucker on the market, now you don't have the opportunity to be able to trade for a Kyle Tucker. And now what's happening in this year, which is maybe a little bit of an outlier, is that there's like 15 to 20 teams that are still kind of in this race. And now you're left with the bottom feeders of the league and whoever you got to choose from with 15, 20 other teams that might be buyers. When you could have made a trade in June, possibly, to be able to get some of these players that were dangled out there. And now you're left with just who's willing to make trades at this point.
I have an answer on that.
And the teams that are sitting there waiting, though, talking about the teams that have the ability of making these trades, the sellers of the market, they can get more now than they would have gotten possibly in June because there's so many teams that want these players. So now you're talking about the Roberts of the world, or possibly a national like Lane Thomas, or possibly Pham, like you were saying, Jason, who's like more of a platoon type player. I mean, the only guy I think that makes the most sense to give up what the team is asking for due to his control and his age is Robert. I don't know that, Tommy Pham or a guy like that's going to make a big difference on the team because he's going to platoon with Marsh, and you still got Rojas playing center field because you don't want to lose that defense. So the center fielder, to me, is the piece that you need if you want the bat in the lineup, because Rojas is good enough defensively, but you lose the bat. You don't have the bat. So you have to play Marsh. And unless you get, if you get a left fielder, you're going to have to platoon with him. So I don't understand. My point is this. I don't know why more GMs don't get aggressive in June when they have opportunities to be able to trade for guys rather than wait to the deadline when tons of teams are after the same talent and you have to give up more for one less month.
I'm going to
going into the season.
I'm going to answer that. And it's basically the industry that you're in. Think of when somebody first puts a house up for sale. They might ask for, on a $500,000 house, they might ask for $700,000 for the house. Are you willing to give $700,000? Like, okay, Kyle Tucker might have been available to Dombrowski, but they would have wanted Painter, Aiden Miller, Stott, Kerkering, go up and down the lineup of what they wanted, right? Now, Dombrowski probably says, okay, if I wait, then, that price might go down by the time the trade deadline comes. So I think those guys are, I don't think anybody's untouchable, right? Who's untouchable? Like, if you're willing to give me your whole farm system, then you could trade somebody. You're willing to trade somebody.
They're untouchable now because that team's not going to make that trade.
I understand, but there's other guys that you don't necessarily have to have Kyle Tucker. There's other guys that
using him as an example.
You answered your question, and it's that maybe Houston would have traded Tucker in June for an unreasonable price, but they were only putting the unreasonable price tag on it because they knew in their mind that this could be the result, which is they're now in first place and they're in the playoffs. And they've got a veteran squad that if they get hot, they're a championship caliber team that has been there. So they weren't going to give up on the season in June unless they were, the worst team in the league because they had the faith they were going to turn it around, or they were going to at least take as long as they could before the trade deadline before starting to make those moves. Now, if you would have called, I'm sure if Dombrowski calls and says, I'll give you Painter, Crawford, and Miller for Tucker, yeah, they probably do that deal because they could always flip those guys later on for somebody else if they wanted to get back in the race. But because, Houston, because of their track record, is in their mind, they said, well, we're not out of it yet, even though we're in last place. So because of that, there's going to be a high price tag if they're even willing to take calls on a guy like Tucker at that in June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
that price tag can also go up, even though it's an extra month now that you've played the season, and you're only going to get this guy for the stretch run for teams that maybe have injuries.
Yeah.
Now, like, the pitching, in amongst baseball right now, there are like 4 really, really good teams that need pitchers. Maybe if before the injuries occurred, the market wouldn't have had as many suitors that have the goods to trade for those guys in June. I'm only saying that a lot of stuff can happen during a baseball season that can change the market on a player. If you want to be aggressive, I mean, it doesn't always make sense to be aggressive at the deadline rather than being aggressive before it to get the player that you want.
Yeah, but being aggressive before, does that mean giving away your whole farm system? Because that's what
I
you
don't know.
probably wanted for Kyle Tucker.
Would it be any different if the Astros were out of the race right now and they were dangling Kyle Tucker out there to the teams that need outfielders? The market would still bear what you're gonna have to give up.
No, but he'd be one more outfielder in a group of 4 or 5 outfielders that we might talk about in a minute that are going to be, middle to top of the market. I mean, it's the risk. Teams also may not want to give up that much. Okay, like in June, the Phillies are obviously a pretty good spot, but if something goes wrong and they tank, now they've made a trade in June for. I mean, the one I always think of is when was it Cleveland or Montreal traded for Cologne with Cleveland. And it was like pretty early before the deadline, and then Montreal fell apart, or whoever, they didn't make the playoffs.
Cliff Lee, right? Was that Cliff?
Yeah, they sent Cliff Lee and Grady Sizemore and all those guys to Cleveland. It wasn't a deadline deal. I think they made that actually well in advance of what you normally see for the deadline. It didn't work out, and now they're in Washington. But it's, to me, I think teams are not as willing to make that risk of giving up all that because they kind of like, well, we don't want to overplay our hand, and then if something goes wrong. The Phillies got 4 major injuries within a few weeks. The team held it together. That could easily have went south if they weren't, as good as they are. And I don't know. There's a reason why you don't see those deals. Typically, it's because people are usually not willing to sell or they ask too much and people aren't willing to buy at that point. And I think there's something to say with being aggressive and getting ahead of the market. But I will defer to these guys that have been doing it all their lives. There's a risk-reward ratio that they don't see as worth it.
Jimmy D, what do you think? What do you want to see them do?
I'm nervous there for a second because I thought I was between you and Meeker. I thought I was in a property tax hearing, but I don't want to see the chemistry disrupted. Trading for a guy like Rivera could do that. He's got a history, and I'm not so sure I want to see. This is a tight-knit group. I really believe that needs to be tweaked. Not shelled. Can we get that reliever? Yeah. Can we go to Oakland and get their reliever? Maybe. We've got 4 good relievers, I believe, on this team. We also have the Sotos. We have the Dominguez. We've had the guys that, their ERAs are out astronomical, and you got to get rid of them. I understand in a playoff situation. Chris, you alluded to Taijuan Walker and the use of him last year. What's that all about? He went through the rotation and was buried. And now where is he? I don't understand the use of Taijuan Walker and why he's even on this team. And I don't want that kind of thing to come about with the acquisition of somebody they're going to use for a while and that's it. You're still the best team in baseball. I don't think you have to blow anything up. I don't think anything is wrong with this team. Can you make it better? Yeah, you always try to strengthen your home. There's no question about it. You want your hand as strong as you possibly can get it. But I don't see Dombrowski doing a whole lot before July 31st. I really don't. He's got a good product this year, and it's cohesive product this year. If you make it better, fine. If you can get somebody, fine. But to your other point, Chris, and this is what I was joking around with when Jason mentioned to you, Congress does things the same way. It's the last minute that every one of those bills are passed. And it was always strange to me that it was done that way. Seems like baseball follows suit. The last minute, the 30th and the 31st, you're going to see a lot of moves. But I don't think it's necessary with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Chalky, give me some names. What do you want to see them do?
Well, let me start with the positions and then we'll get into names. I think number one priority, as most of us have been saying all year, is bullpen. You have to come out of the trade deadline with having solidified who your closer is going to be, whether that's trading for that person or bringing in a different arm that will allow Hoffman or whoever, and I don't know that can be anybody else but Hoffman on the team right now, to be the permanent closer. I don't want to see this playing around. Okay, like Strom came in the other night. Okay, like you got to have one guy for the ninth inning moving forward. I know that's not Thompson's style, but I would feel comfortable, and then you can do the rest with the rest of the road, the guys in there.
I agree with that. Yep.
So, and I'm at the point now where, I agree you need an outfield bat. I don't think it can be a platoon guy. I think you need to trade for a starter. Marsh missed that play yesterday. They're saying, well, he might be hurt. He's playing this. Well, he just came off the DL. So you're going to, get somebody to platoon with Marsh, and then maybe he's not healthy. So if he's in the lineup, he's not giving you what you think. And honestly, like we talked, Meeker talked about defense. I don't want to put, who's the worst defensive player you ever seen? I don't want to put somebody like Rhys Hoskins in the outfield. But honestly, like defense to me is not that much of a priority because whoever you get, like there's no, I think Robert is the only Gold Glove, outfielder that they could bring in if he comes in to play center. I don't think you're getting that much worse if you trade for a left fielder that you have to, now go Marsh, Rojas in center field. So my preferences would be, now I don't know, I saw that he might be, I don't know he's going to DL, but Miller broke his finger hitting a table earlier this week or something. I saw a report today. Hopefully, yeah. No, Miller, the Oakland closer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hopefully it was from a legitimate source on Twitter. But yes, so I'm assuming he's not on the IL or anything yet. I would put together almost any deal necessary to get Miller and Roker from Oakland. And maybe that's recency bias.
One deal?
Whatever prospects you want. Honestly,
you're gonna have to give. Well, first of all, I'm not crazy about Rooker because he's a butcher. That's another butcher you're gonna put in the outfield.
I get it, but I think I would rather I think if you get a good bat upgrade, it's going to offset whatever defense you lose if they're playing in left field permanently. Now, maybe that's recency bias because he had a 6,000-foot home run at the Vet, but his numbers, he's got decent numbers playing in Oakland, which is not a hitter's park, and he's got even better numbers on the road. But if you don't want to go Rooker, Thomas to me is not sufficient enough, right now. He's a platoon guy, but I'm not comfortable with a platoon there. I think you need a closer in it. So, even if you go, let's say you go to Washington and get a Finneran, maybe, I would go after a Rosarena from Tampa. I think you need one of those big name. I think you need a bat coming in the outfield, and you need to get a closer. And I know he started slow this year, but he's a great playoff player, and he is actually getting on the roll now. Robert, I'm not super high on. I know they're trying to talk about trading. Is it Crochet? I don't know how you say his name, but he wants an extension to pitch in the playoffs. So he's automatically, someone else can have him. That doesn't interest me. But I'm gonna say, so let's say one of either Miller or Finneran and one of Rosarena or Rooker. I think those are the moves they got to make. Because and the last thing, because I went through that whole list of teams that are in the playoffs that are just playing right now. This season, and I know the Dodgers have guys that are coming back. They have a Cy Young staff just on the IL right now. This is going to be as good a season as any to go out and win the World Series. I think Dombrowski needs to be. Can they win without making a big move? Yes, but I think now's the time to go for the jugular. And you go and you win this year. And I think you do one or two moves that will get you almost guaranteed to get to the World Series.
See, I want a number 3 starter as much as I want anything because I do not trust Ranger Suarez, and I don't think Thompson trusts Ranger Suarez because you look at the playoffs last year, he was pulling them after 5 innings, and he was pulling them after 4 innings, and I think they're going to make a move. I think their big move is going to be they're going to bring in a pitcher. They're going to bring in a starting pitcher, and that's going to be your number 3 starter. And don't be surprised if Suarez gets traded. Because if they bring in a pitcher, nobody wants Taijuan Walker. They're stuck with him. It was a bad signing. They're stuck with him now. He's your number 5 starter. and that's just the way it is.
Well, you haven't seen
Sanchez, I
anything
don't
in the
think they're going to
playoffs.
trade. No, they don't. They didn't. They. I think he was saving him in the playoffs for an extra inning game because in the playoffs you could go 16 innings in a game, and if you run out of pitchers, you're done. So at least if you have a guy who's he's got length. I think that was the plan with him, but they didn't want to use him obviously. But I think Sanchez is a great number 4. You're fine with Wheeler and Nola as 1 and 2. I think you need a number 3, and I think Suarez could be one of the guys that go.
So who in your mind would be the 3 that you would be looking to pick up?
Well, they mentioned Jack Flaherty from the Tigers. He has had a really good year. He's got length to him, so there's no worry about his innings. His inning, anything about shutting down or anything like that.
Jay, is he a lefty or right?
He's a right-hander. He's a right-hander. Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point. Maybe you're looking for a lefty. I mean, maybe Crochet. Maybe you bring him in. Like I didn't hear about that. He won't pitch in the playoffs unless
he said he's not pitching in October unless he gets a contract extension because he had Tommy John. He's coming off injury. He said he's not going to go to the bullpen. He said he's not pitching in October unless he gets a contract extension.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then I'm probably not interested in him. But you got to look at the bottom feeders, and I'll give you another guy that you guys know I like, Zach Eflin. I think he would be very good guy to bring in here. I don't know if he's legit number 3, but he's a guy that you could, he kills 2 birds with 1 stone because you could throw him in a bullpen, right?
Yeah, he's a guy I thought about mentioning. There's a bunch of other teams that are interested in him. And I think you might see like in Atlanta pay more than maybe what the market rate should be just because they're a little more desperate for an arm like that. But if they brought him back, I mean, I would be perfectly fine, perfectly fine with that.
Mika, what do you got? Any names?
Well, name-wise, I mean, I just don't. I don't think they're going to trade for a starting pitcher. I said that earlier. And I actually, if I'm looking at Sanchez and Suarez, I'm actually trusting Sanchez more than I'm trusting Suarez right now. I think.
But you're trusting him as a number 3 starter
Yeah.
in a World Series team?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
more than some of the guys that you would bring in, probably.
Fine.
But you look at the outfield situation again. If you bring in a guy that is not the center fielder, then you're still playing Rojas in center field, right? So if you're bringing in a guy because Marsh can't hit lefties, and Elaine Thomas, I think, is a good enough player to play every day, but then you're moving Marsh to center field and you're platooning him with Rojas.
I'm okay
So
with
that
that.
would be-
I'm okay
That's
with that.
what you would do. You wouldn't platoon him with Marsh. You'd platoon him with Rojas.
Yeah, I'm
because
okay with
Marsh-
that.
Don't you think
So,
Thompson
if
Chris
that's
is
not
going to
gonna
play
come-
Rojas no matter what? He's been hard hit. I said,
What's
don't
that?
you think
He likes him.
No, not if you get a guy like that can play every day in left field that brings you some power and some speed. Like he's a guy that I would really want if you want to trade for an outfielder that's not going to cost you a heck of a lot. Because I don't think they want to, pay what the market's going to bear for a Luis Robert. I think that you're going to get a guy like that. And I would be happy with that. But I will be happy mainly with the bullpen piece because I just can't. I just can't do it. I don't know how many times that I've texted you when Alvarado comes into the game in the 9th inning, or even Soto comes in a high leverage situation, and I say, you can look at what I see. I cannot trust what I'm seeing. I can't trust it. And when you're in the playoffs and you're going to be in close games, I'm not worried so much about what the bat gives you, what the offense gives you, because I think they have a good enough offense to score runs. And, I'm not worried so much about, I'm worried about the 8th and 9th inning. And I don't know if I'd be aggressive as what Chalky said in trying to get both those guys from Oakland, because I think that's going to cost you way too much. I would rather go for a guy like Tanner Scott, see what Miami wants.
But hold on a
And-
second. Let me stop you right there. Because
He's had a better second half so far than Mason Miller has.
hold on.
If you look at this,
I like Tanner Scott, but I don't think he's like a legitimate like rock solid. He's your closer type guy. That's another closer by committee guy. Like
I don't
Hoffman's
know.
just as good as Tanner Scott. Now Mason
But
Miller,
I mean,
Mason
but
Miller
does
is
not
your
help
closer.
him
Yeah,
in the eighth inning and having Tanner Scott, who has pitched a ninth inning all year, just go back into a role that he's had. I know he hasn't played on a good team, but that doesn't preclude the stats he has.
I like
Well,
him. I just think I don't think like if they trade for him, I don't think he's your, you know, ninth inning guy. I think he's one of the mix again, and that's fine with me.
That costs you less. That costs you less than a Mason Miller.
I
right?
agree. I like
Yeah.
Hoffman. I think Hoffman could do it. I think Hoffman could be a closer.
And that's fine, but then you got to bring somebody in that's going to take his innings other than the ninth
It
in
could
one
be
of these
Tanner
other
Scott.
deals, which
Yeah.
could be Scott, or there's a couple other guys there. Adam and Fairbanks on Tampa were two guys that were mentioned today that they're interested in. None of those. I know Fairbanks that will close. I don't trust him to close, but those might be guys that could be your seventh or eighth inning guys in a lot of situations. The other thing I'll say this, and Dombrowski's 67. You can do a lot of great things at that age or older, including president of the United States for however many times we're going to have to vote for two. Well, not anymore, but anyway. He's not going to be when Miller and Painter and all these guys get really good in 4 or 5 years. He's not going to be. He's going to be retired. Hopefully, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know that he's worried about what the team's going to look like 5 years from now if he trades these guys. When he's not around, when he's retired, and I think this is, and I know I'm being very aggressive. I think it'll be, my scenario is much more aggressive than I'll end up being, but I think you have to seriously think about going for the kill shot this year and getting the title while everybody else, there's no real standout team in the league right now.
Or do you do what Gillick did in 08 and just make the shrewd deals for the
That's the
Joe
flip side.
Blandons and Matt Stairs of the world?
That's the flip side for sure. For sure.
They got hot at the right time. The Blandons at the time, that was a slick move. That's a good word, because they didn't cost you a lot, but yet they were so effective at the end, you were able to win.
Yeah.
There's obviously they had a lot of great talent on that team. There's a couple of things that went right. Like Brett Myers, second half turned into a legit number 2 starter. And Worth, who was picked up, the year before, turned into a solid player, an all-star player for a couple of years. So they probably have more talent on this team than the 08 team I know we talked about before. And I forget what I said, but I'll say this team probably has more talent now. But man, I just want to see them go. I don't want to see them overpay and just spend like a lot of these teams do. But man, this is the year that we can just take it and run away with it. I just want to see them do it.
I don't think the window closes after this year, though.
I don't think it's either. But you go get Miller's in his, Miller's a guy that's going to be on your team for years. Let's just say he's a young kid. There's some of these other guys have control for a couple years that they're talking about. So it's not like you're going and getting like the free agent next year. It's going to walk away. I wouldn't mortgage the team for that. But if you've got Miller and Rooker, you would basically be mortgaging the team. But those are both guys that are under 30 that have possibly some good years ahead of them still, that you don't have to, walk away from them in a year or so.
Well, the other reason why it's their year is because all these other teams are experiencing a lot of injuries, and now you have Milwaukee.
Yelich he might not come back this year.
Yeah, and that's bad. That's bad news for them. Obviously the Dodgers have had their rotation problems. The Braves lose Strider and the Acuna and now Albies. I mean, it's there. It's there for the taking. And I think that they'll win the National League even without making a move. It's the American League. It's the World Series that I'm worried about. I think the American League teams that they could face are the ones that might give them problems. And look, we're going to see 2 of them in the next 6 days. So you got Cleveland and you get the Yankees at home.
The Yankees are done. The Yankees.
But they're still a playoff team,
Maybe.
So these are teams that you're going to have a little of a barometer to test and see, whether or not a trade is absolutely necessary, because they're not bad teams and they're American League teams.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'll give you my outside Phillies deadline prediction. Baltimore gets Scooble from Detroit.
Oh my God.
They might.
They can trade 3 or 4 guys that aren't going to play on this team this year or next year, and that'll be within Detroit's window of possibly getting good again. And Scooble's got a couple more years of control. That's my outside of Phillies prediction is Baltimore goes out and gets Scooble.
Phillies could get him. The Phillies could go get him. Do you?
They could, but
You want to trade Painter and Miller? You would probably get Skubal.
sure. But I think you're going too top heavy on the rotation at that point. But I mean, yeah, you could do that. I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't commend if they do that and we come on next week. I'm not going to roast Dombrowski for doing it.
No.
I just think you better do something else to get a small bullpen piece then. But
All right, guys. So we're 40 minutes in. So let's wrap up the baseball Phillies talk from here. Meeker, you are welcome to stay for our Saratoga talk if you would like.
Gotta walk the dog.
All righty. Well, thank you for joining. And let's get into the spa.
all right, so we're going to transition, as Jason said, into the late pick 4 for Saratoga this Saturday. Featured race this Saturday is the Grade 2 Jim Dandy, prepping for the Travers later in the meet. 3 of the 4 races in this sequence will actually be on the turf. The Jim Dandy will be the only dirt race, but we'll get into all that in just a second. So, as per tradition now, for however many years we've been doing this, we always like to go to our expert at the beginning of the meet to see how things are going and get his perspective on what kind of trends or differences we're seeing year to year with the tracks. So, Jimmy D, I'm going to throw it to you. I know you're a guy that usually, you like to always say you keep your hands in your pockets during the start of the meet, but, have you been betting anymore? What kind of trends are you seeing? Is there anything you're picking up differently now that we're passing the 3/4 pole of the meet so far?
I hear you, Chalky. I hear you. But before we do that, I know we always give a shout out to Giovanni's Pizza. So I don't know. I want to make sure your sponsor's good. Because the best way to have a Giovanni's Pizza, and I'm still looking for them in Saratoga, by the way, is to have it with a Saratoga tumbler. Now, if you have it with the tumbler, the juices taste better, as sodas are just colder. Anyhow.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, Giovannini's might be able to make some money up there because it's hard to get a good slice of pizza in Saratoga.
For sure. I hear you, but, from the time you guys were up here in the Belmont until now, we talked about front speed and how it was holding up. And I really thought I was going to come on here and say the track is changing now. Now the conditions are starting to play fairer to the outside posts and to the closers. But I can't say that. I just can't say that at this point in time. I always give you an overview, too, of some of the things in Saratoga. And I jotted down a few things. Corporate has taken over Saratoga. Unfortunately, it happens everywhere. It happens at every stadium. I hear you. But now, we have a cutwater terrace. We have the top of the stretch boxes. We have the 1880 at 63 Club. The concessions, everything is $22 sandwiches there, the chicken sandwiches. It has gotten ridiculous, the prices at this track. And the people here had stopped going to those places. And let me tell you something, a little secret, the Saratoga attendance figures are not out anymore for a reason. Because number one, as you heard me say many a times in the last few years, the first couple of weeks are always down here. The attendance is off. It picks up a little bit more as we get into the Whitney, we get into the 4-star day, and we get down to the Travers. But the attendance has been really off so far this year, to the point, like I said, they're not even giving you the attendance any longer. The length of the racing day, that's another problem I have with Saratoga's racing. That racing day starts at 1 o'clock and it ends at 7 o'clock. That racing day is ridiculous. It's like a work day for people. It's got to stop. The feature races of these days are going off, unless it affects the pick 4, it's going off at 6:30. That's ridiculous. It's just way too late. That's a problem. We get into the restaurants in town. Let's talk about some of the restaurants. Solivo and Stereo Danny, and I think it's called Stereo Danny. It's still going strong. The overpriced eateries, and Mamma Mia's is still the best for anybody coming up here. And it's the cheapest, unless you're going to the hot dog cart back in High Rock. That's really the cheapest. But nonetheless, new places out here, Lagos on the lake. Very interesting restaurant, wonderful ambiance, light fare. Everybody's talking about it. It seems to be the hot place so far.
Is that the place we tried to go to, Jim? Jimmy Chalk?
I don't think that's unless if they renamed it. That wasn't the name of the place we were trying to go to.
It might have been called 55 Jimmy 550
Yes.
or Low.
Yes. Yes.
They have
Yes.
renamed it. They opened it last
Okay.
year and they've renamed it. It's a good point. It's called Lagos now, but it's really a nice
Yeah.
place. It's a hot spot to go to in town. But for the most part, I think people, people are happy with it. They always run. I was kidding around about the tumbler simply because it's just spinning. All that does is get the attendance figures up. You got to go in and out the gate several times to get your free gift, which now costs $10 upon entry. So Saratoga will always exist. Saratoga is just I loved it forever. The people that come up here it's like an elixir. They get up here, they never go away. It's either in their heart or it's in their minds until the early August, or if they get up here earlier than that, now July. It's what I used to call a boutique meet, Chalk. And like you said to me, not boutique at 40 days anymore. Can't argue with that. 40 days and 8 weeks. But Saratoga still got everything happening up here. Everything is good. Any of our listeners, they've been to racetracks through the world. Saratoga compares with any of them. I don't know the entire world, but from Del Mar to Keeneland to Saratoga, that's a trifecta that everybody should make.
Jimmy D, let me ask you a question. Have you and Terry tried that ramen place Raya yet?
No, not yet. No,
I have a
I've
story
heard about
about it. Yep, I have a story about that place.
What's that?
We happened to go to that place after the Belmont Stakes. Jimmy the Chalk, myself, and Meeker, and I never saw two guys cry, literally cry about how hot their soup was before in my life.
All right. Well, let's
Crying to the waiter,
let's
crying to the
clarify.
waiter. The poor
No. One of us cried to the waiter and was begging for ice water.
Yeah.
It was not me. Now,
I'm not sure.
it was one of the hottest. It was one of the top 3 hottest, spiciest things I ever ate in my life. So no, and it was it was over. I forget the word that the waiter used after we ordered. Of course, it was overwhelming. Now I don't know if that's the word used, but something along those lines, like the heat and the spice. Now compare that to Meeker and I had the same thing. Now Jason had something different, and so when the waiter comes back and we're asking about this, we said, well, what's his like? And the waiter said, well, how hot? We said, how hot is Jason? The waiter said, well, that's the stuff we usually give to the people that are on like bland diets from the hospital when we make donations once a week. Right. So he wasn't exactly like eating anything that was like super over the top either. But nonetheless, Jason has said next time we go there, he will try the what we had, so that way we can all be miserable together. But
Chuck, when we went out and I'll abbreviate this because I know our podcast is running long. But when we went out, we went into a Belmont menu, and the Belmont menu had increased their prices exponentially, which was a joke. And that's what they did on Belmont weekend. And they continued to do it in some places here. A little bit disappointing because, I think corporate, as I said earlier, has invaded Saratoga.
So one quick question, then we'll get into the pick 4 for you, Jim. Seeing as how this is the first year that they had the obviously abbreviated Belmont meet, just a little more than a month before the start of the regular spot meet, has that created like a different vibe, or is there maybe a little less enthusiasm for what people normally have circled on the calendar a year ahead of time because some people were there just a month before, or has that kind of that vibe and the way the town's kind of moving around, does that kind of stay the same despite just having a pretty big event like just a month before?
No, I don't think it has affected it at all, Chuck. The first couple of weeks, as I said, are always a little lighter up here. And I never cared what Larry used to say about attendance because, I'm there. And I'm not there every day, but I'm certainly there and I'm following it. And it's always been a little lighter. But in terms of the enthusiasm, it kind of increases. It's almost like the speed of the horses as they're coming down the straight. And it just increases. And I can see it happening now. Right around the Jim Dandy, it starts. It enters into that Whitney, that special events. Then they have the horse auction start. And the town is vibrant. A lot of things are going on. The Hall of Fame ceremonies coming up next week. They're excited about that with Gunrunner going in and Justify and Joel Rosario. It's just a lot of other things happening here. And it's business as usual. But August, it's the place to be. Simple as that. Unfortunately, now it's July, August, and Hopefully it'll never get, July, August, and September, or June, July, and August. And I firmly believe that Belmont is one day going to be run at Saratoga Springs, New York. I just believe that. I don't care what they do with Belmont downstate, but they had a great Saturday that Belmont. They did not have a great Thursday, Friday, nor Sunday, but a great Saturday. And there's talk that the Triple Crown Series may change and all of that, and maybe it should. Maybe they need a month apart with those horse races, like they do every other horse race. But we'll see. But no, the vibrancy of Saratoga is still there.
Well, if they separate them by a month, then you'll have trainers that take 2 months off between races. But that's another discussion for a whole nother podcast. So, all right, let's get into it. So, late pick 4 for Saturday starts with race 9 at 5:04 post time. It's a mile and a 16th on the inner turf. Optional claimer. I think this race is kind of wide open, like most of the turf races here. But let's start off with Jason. Who are you looking at in race 9?
Yeah, so I'm going to go 3 deep here, but I'm throwing out the favorite, the 12, risk tolerance. You don't want to be on the outside on the inner turf. So I'm tossing him at 3-1. And my top pick's going to be the 8 West Hollywood for Pratt and Cox. Pratt's just been on fire there, and the horse is going to be forward. I like speed on the dirt and on the turf at Saratoga. So I'm always going to be preferential to a horse that's going to be close to pace. My second pick is going to be the 3 Navy SEAL for Ward and the Tory. That horse has just been running against better overseas, and in group races and stuff. So, but then my third choice, I'll throw a long shot in the 5 Moonlight for Pletcher and Giroux. The horse is getting Lasix for this race. He didn't have Lasix last race, and he ran last on the Churchill Downs turf. Some horses just don't like that turf. It's very, it's very different. So I'll throw him in as a long shot. So 3, 5, 8 are my picks there.
All right, Jimmy D, who do you have?
Jay, you make a great point. On the inner, I never like the outside, but I'm going to make an exception. And I'm going to make an exception with a 15-1 shot. These guys are crazy. They call them the Turks. And it's, and I'll kill this name, but
Karamachi or something?
Karamachi, Mercan, I'm looking at the 10 horse, Drunk Ozaki. He ran an unbelievable race when he was here, broke his maiden last year on June 4th. And the guy who's riding him, Jose Ortiz, he's become a middle rider. He's become like Luis Saez. He's not his brother no more. And, Irod has his leaps and bounds better than him. But I watched him yesterday on Paros break on the inner turf from the 11 post. And he was able to move that horse and save ground. He didn't get the lead. He didn't go out crazily and, force the lead. But he found a way to get to the rail and had enough to win on that horse. This is, I'm a horse for a course kind of guy. He's won at Saratoga. These guys are I'd like to call them crafty, but I'd rather call them shady. This outfit that runs this particular horse. He gets in a little late at 118. I'm going to give you a 15-1 shot as my top horse, Drunk Onsaki. Let's make this pick 4 interesting. If we're going to hit it, let's hit it big. Second, I go to Main Beach. It's a brown horse. We talk about brown. He's going to get bet. He's still going to bet his other horse. So what's going to happen? It's going to be this horse. Jay, the one that you alluded to will be the horse that's bet. This horse, I like for second. And then I like, coming in third, I like the Tory on Navy SEAL. He rode this horse in Ireland. He knows the horse a little bit. He won a race today, Frankie. And he's never to be discounted on the grass. Aidan O'Brien had this horse, and now he's in Wesley Ward's barn. Wesley goes out there and he dominates for Americans. He does very well in Ascot every year. He's got a good relationship with Aidan O'Brien, and now he's got this Navy SEAL. He can upset. I'm giving you 2 5-1 shots and a 15-1 shot to start it off, and the 15-1 shot to my top.
Yep. All right. So some of the same thoughts to you guys, but in no particular, I'll start with at least the one horse we haven't talked about yet, which is the number 1 horse, C Singer. Johnny V riding for McCarthy. McCarthy doesn't chip allowance horses to Saratoga that often, but he has some success when he's coming over. And he's obviously a good trainer. So interesting to see why he's not hanging out for Del Mar, bringing it. Team Valor has people on both sides of the country. So I don't know if it's just they want to see him run on the East Coast or whatever. But I thought, that was an interesting move. So I have the one C Singer involved. The 2 and the 3 are horses that I have as well. You guys talked about them. I'll say, DeTore has cost me more money than he's made me this year. I'm not as high as him as I would have been a year ago, but I thought that made sense. And I mean, I do have the 12 involved. He's going to go out before he plays, so you don't want to be that wide. But I mean, if he breaks well, Franco is probably just going to try to sit him right off of either the 8 or the 2, and be, not that wide, getting that first turn. The other horses you guys mentioned, I think you've made valid points for them. I stayed away from the 8 for kind of the same reasons that one of the horses Jason didn't like. The Churchill is funky, so if horses do really well there, I don't necessarily give them the same credit going into another race, and if they do poorly, I don't use that as a negative so much. So he ran very well twice in the Churchill, but they're tearing it up again because who knows what's going on with that. So that's why I left that horse out. But so for me, 4 horses, 1, 2, 3, and 12. All right, so that takes us to the 10th race to feature the Grade 2 Jim Dandy, 1 mile and an eighth on the main track for 3-year-olds. Only 6 horses, but we do have some accomplished ones in here. It's the return of the beaten Derby favorite in Fierceness, as well as Derby and Belmont runner-up in the Money Sierra Leone. Jimmy, who do you like in the Jim Dandy?
Thank you, Chuck. I'll tell you what, they'll never say that I don't have balls. I think it's a 1-horse race to the wire. And I think Fierceness is the best 3-year-old in the country. I know he's funky. I got it. I know he doesn't show up. I got it. I understand that whole situation. But Pletcher's waited on this. They tell me the horse is right. He's good in the morning. Pletcher 3 works back, fired this horse, and he went a 101 in a 5-furlong breeze. You got to put a line through that Kentucky Derby. He hopped at the start. He ran lousy, disappointed everybody. They held him out. There was speculation that something's wrong with this horse. I don't think there's anything wrong with this horse. Traditionally, the Jim Dandy is the prep for the Travers. We had Essential Quality and Epicenter do it in the last couple of years. Win both races is what I'm referring to. Pletcher has done this many times. He's done it with Forte. He's done it with Palace Malice, Flower Alley, Purge, Strong Hope. I'm just going back to show you what Pletcher's mindset is. I think this horse gets the lead. I think he'll be challenged on the front end for a while. I just think this horse is a monster. And I think, he wins this race convincingly.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on the 6 Fierceness. One of the knocks is that if things don't go exactly his way, he doesn't win. But he's got an every other pattern. Well, this would be the one race that this is his on race if you look at it that way. And his 3 losses where he had trouble at the break. So in a 6-horse field on the outside, he's not going to get pinball between horses. He might hop at the gate, but you have a shorter field with some less accomplished horses. So you have a little bit more leeway to have something like that go wrong. Now, what may not go his way is that everybody but Sierra Leone is going to be forwardly placed, so he's not going to be able just to kind of loop along on the lead. But I don't know that it'll be particularly hot pace, so he can sit right off. I think it's set. I mean, if he's on, the race sets up perfectly for him, I think. And I'm going to bet that he is going to be on. So 6 Fierceness is a single for me here. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, so my write-up is, if you look at this race, and, Chalk, you just mentioned, there's a ton of speed, which to me sets up for the 1 Sierra Leone. I just see Saratoga as a speed favoring track, and I've seen issues with Sierra Leone lugging in down the stretch. I don't know if those issues have been fixed. Fierceness to me, the 6, he's the 2nd favorite. I still think he's questionable. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think when he gets looked in the eye, I don't know if he's got the heart to finish anybody off. So I don't know if you guys saw my text today, but they were cryptic. Well, my top pick is going to be the 3 batting down for Mott, and that's why I was saying, oh, I missed his birthday by 2 days. If you look at the thoroughgraphs for this horse, he tripled eights and then jumped to a 3 in the Ohio Derby. Um, I think he can make another move with a great trainer like Mott, and being a 3-year-old getting later in the season. I think he could jump up, and I think he could improve on that 3 in the thoroughgraphs. Now, that being said, Sierra Leone has tripled 1, so he might be able to jump up. But again, Saratoga to me, especially in a dirt race, I'm always going to take speed. So I'm going to take a shot with batting down. I think you're going to get a decent price on him. I trust Mott. I might look stupid Saturday night because, uh, to me, the other horse would be Sierra Leone. So I'm going to do an exacta 3 over 1, but I'm also going to reverse that and do 1 over 3. But I'm taking a shot with batting down as my top choice 3.
Chuck, just before we get off this race, batting down would have been my good pick, Jay. I love his dam, Close Hatches. I watched that horse. It's a great horse.
Yep.
And I saw the father of that horse, the Broadway sire, First Defense, a solid horse down the line. And, Mott's going to shoot this horse from the gate. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But one other thing about fierceness, when he traveled, he was funky. He didn't like to go to a different spot. Mott,
Yeah.
Pletcher's kept him here, and he seems to be settled down. They showed some works out here of his. I caught them on their local programming, and he just looks comfortable. And as Chalky had said earlier, and we'll conclude this with this, he's going to be a single for me.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't disregard batting down. If I had to go too deep, I would probably go, that horse over Sierra Leone. Unless they're going to put Sierra Leone more forwardly placed because of the way the track plays and the way he's had issues, unless it's a complete pace melt, then I think it's against him in the short field like this. So, but yeah, interesting. All right, we'll see how that goes. On to race 11. So back on the turf, outer turf, the melon this time around. It's, again, a mile and a 16th. This time for state bred allowance. I'll start here. So I'm 4 deep in here, and like the first race, probably could have used more. The 4 I have, 1 Clear Conscience, the 4 Gem Mint 10. Now Saez hasn't had a great start to the meet, but Handel's been doing all right. Handel won 1 today, as well, I believe. So he's been, that's a trainer pick, not a jockey pick. So Saez has been a little disappointing. I have the 7 Topic Changer, Gaffleone and Maker, and 8 Whistler's Honor, Abreu and Ortiz. And there's probably 2 or 3 other ones that I'm not using, and I'm not using the favorite. And it's not a real strong opinion on any of these. I just think that there's a lot of horses that could fit to win here. And I wanted to go against the favorite, the 2 coming right out of the maiden races, facing, winners for the first time. And the 7 really did intrigue me because, it went, it started on as a, thoroughbreds and went to the hurdles. It's the second time with Maker, and, Maker got him to run pretty well in a similar company downstate at Aqueduct. And Maker's got good stats, obviously on turf, on dirt too, but it's particularly turf with Gaffleone. I might make that my top pick if I got to make one at 10-1 for a price, but 4 there for me, 1, 4, 7, 8 in total. Jason.
So I'm going to go 2 deep here. State bred long on the turf sometimes yields prices at Saratoga. It's always a good race to use in the tournament that we are in. So again, I like 2 horses. My top pick's going to be the 8 Whistler's Honor with Irad and Abreu. I like Saratoga horses for courses. He's got a win here. He's getting Irad. His last race was taken off the turf. I like him to win. But my second pick is a horse that Chalky just mentioned. I think it's his top pick. That's the 7 Topic Changer with Gaffleone and Maker. Another horse that has won at Saratoga. Like you mentioned, he's second off a layoff, and he's coming out of running in hurdles. Makers seem shady. I don't know. Something about that horse. I think that horse has got a big shot in this race. So 2 horses, 7 and 8 for me.
All right, Jimmy.
I want to bore the betting public, but I like the 7 and 8. You got a hot trainer with Maker, with a relatively hot rider. He's right behind the top two with Gaffleone. This particular combination is pretty effective up here. It's been pretty effective up here. Horse for a course, as Jason alluded to, he would be my top pick. And of course, I like Abreu. Jorge Abreu is a trainer. He comes out of a solid Hall of Famers barn, and he's getting better and better and getting more horses. He's getting more money into that barn. He'd be my second choice. And if I ride as he chooses to ride that horse, it's good enough for me. 7 and 8, it would be for me also.
All right. And, you know, we're not going to get into all the horses, but there's at least probably 2 or 3 on the also eligible list that if they drew in, I think would have to be given consideration, including another Maker horse. The weather is supposed to be good, but it seems like there's a lot of vet and steward scratches in the morning, maybe more than normal. Just seems that way. So easily you get 2 or 3 of these horses drawing in. So keep an eye on that if you're looking Saturday morning. All right. Final race of the day and race to pick 4 is race 12. It is on back to the inner turf, 1 mile, maiden special weight. Jason, finish us off.
So I'm all about the 10 North End lady in this race. I watched the replays of this horse's last race, and she was 5 wide early, and that definitely cost her the race. If you watch the end, she gets nipped at the end. She's proven that she's run well at Saratoga. I know we're all horse for course guys here, so if she's 5-1, to me that's a crazy win bet on that horse. I'll throw in a long shot to mess around with, and that's the 5 Autumn underneath with Lescano. I just love Lescano on the turf at Saratoga. Really like him a lot. She might be the only other horse to go with the 10 up front. And again, Lescano on turf at Saratoga, that's a bargain with value almost every race. So I'm going to press the 10, but I'll also use 5 in certain bets that I make.
All right, Jimmy.
I'm in the inside. I like Miss City Girl, the 1 horse. It's Clement's horse with Rosario on him. He had a tremendous improvement in his second start up here at Belmont at Aqueduct. And his stablemate is cross-entered, so the 1A is not going to get in. It was also eligible anyhow. But he's improving on this start. There's an equipment change. He's going to blinkers. He just missed in his last race with that improvement, and I like the sire. I mean, Mucho Macho Man was a favorite horse of mine. I think this horse can, got to close, and it's always a question mark because we talk speed, and I understand. And sometimes, it doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but you're taking a shot when you got a closer. But I would take a shot with Miss City Girl.
I just noticed Clement, and sorry to interrupt you, Jim. Clement's 1 for 21. Well, obviously he won today, but
2, yeah, he's got 2 now, but
I guess 2 for 22, or whatever.
How many he had today.
He's got 4 seconds and 5 thirds. So you got to consider.
Yeah, he's hitting the board. Yeah.
So just quickly for me, so I have 4 here as I do in the other turf races. I have the 5 and the 10. Jason talked about them already. I had the 4 Summer Whirl, I believe is the favorite. Motion with Johnny, 2 races, second going long, is improved in each race, could certainly be right there. And then I also have the 6, She Is All Business, Irad up for Linda Rice. Now, Irad doesn't ride as much for Rice as his brother does, but when they do connect, it's a 31% clip and 60% at Saratoga. That horse is not going to be 10-1 to say the least, but I think could very well win. So 4, 5, 6, 10 for me there. All right. So we'll go around real quick. Jason, do you have a ticket to give out?
Yeah, I'll just give a caveman ticket. So race, it's going to be all the horses I mentioned. Race 9 will be 3, 5, 8. Race 10 will be 1, 3. Race 11 will be 7, 8. Race 12, I'm going to press the 10. So, I mean, that would be a $12, pick 4 for $1. I'll also do a ticket using the 5 as well. So even that one, if you use older horses, would be $1 for $24.
All right, great. Jimmy, do you have a ticket?
Chalky, before I did give you that ticket, just some quick comments about certain races down here. The Diana last week was won by a horse named White Beam. I didn't have him that day. Shame on me. Because it was a Casa Cree clone who won last year. Same type of horse, loves the course. I missed him. Shame on me. I missed him. But that angle works in Saratoga. Something happens to these horses in Saratoga more than anywhere else that happens. I watched Dylan Davis, much improved jock. This is a guy that was getting 20-to-1 shots and winning with Saratoga. That's a family of racehorse drivers. Let me tell you something. Katie Davis, Jackie Davis. I knew the father, Robbie, and we still have communications with him. But this kid can ride, and he's getting better and better and better and better.
I think I saw, I don't know if you saw this, Jim, or you can correct me. After the first 2 weeks, he had the highest ROI of any jock, I think.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. The one other thing to look for in the Vanderbilt, they got this horse Skelly running. That's an interesting race. It's not part of our pick 4, but keep an eye on him. He had an unbelievable win streak. He's unbelievable fast in sprints. It's a pleasure to watch a horse like that. And again, the Hall of Fame is next week. So anybody coming up to Saratoga or watching Saratoga, that's always a beautiful event. And Gunrunner, Justify, and Rosario go in this year. Like I said, there's a lot of things to do in Saratoga. I won't recap everything else. I know we're running late, but come to the spot.
All right. So as we wrap up, I'll give out my pick 4. So first leg, race 9, 1, 2, 3, 12. Race 10 is the single Fierceness. Race 11, 1, 4, 7, 8. And then race 12, 4, 5, 6, 10. So for 50 cents, that's a $32 ticket. Jimmy, I'm sorry, did you have a ticket that you wanted to give out?
Jim, I skipped the ticket, but I will give it to you.
Okay.
I used 3 in the first. It's a $1 ticket from a pick 4, 2, 3, 10 horses that I mentioned, but I didn't elaborate on each one of them. I single the 6. I stay with Fierceness as a single. 3, 7, 8 in the penultimate leg, and 1, 4, 10. It was a $24 ticket. That's a 2, 3, 10 with the 6, with the 3, 7, 8, with the 1, 4, 10. $27. That would have some value if it hit.
It absolutely would. All right, so we'll wrap it up for episode 117 of Broad Street Hustle. Just real quickly, some upcoming episodes. This is going to be the end of July for us, most likely, but August, we'll have more Phillies, more Saratoga. Football season's coming up, so our NFL preview plus perhaps a fantasy football preview. We've had a lot of people sending in cards and letters asking for that, so we're going to put that show together.
What a motley crew that's going to be, but I'm sorry.
Yes. And somewhere, maybe in August, maybe somewhere else down the line, the gauntlet has been thrown down for a rematch for the title of Trivia Champion. This is going to be a one-on-one this time around, I think. But we'll see how it holds up to the famous trilogies, or it might not be Leonard Duran, but we'll see how it ends up. Anyway, but stay tuned for that. That'll be upcoming at some point, probably.
Alidar Al-Shiba is probably going to be.
Well, that would be interesting, since Alidar was the sire of Ali Sheba.
Well, I'm sorry, Al-Shiba. Who was it?
It was Alidar affirmed.
Alidar affirmed. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I had to break your,
No, you're right.
for that. That's it. Anyway, on that note,
I wasn't alive for that, or maybe I was, but I was too young. But I'm.
Yeah, you were alive, but I'm not trying to age anybody here. Episode 117. It's only twice Jason's age. We'll see you next week.
They will.